What's the point in spirituality? It's a great question. I can think of 5 huge reasons, and even then, the right thing for you might be to not engage in it. Even the question itself has 2 different meanings or interpretations, one with a touch of frustration maybe, as I'll come on to and bring clarity to all of these questions. But where does that clarity come from? It wasn't easy to come by. I've been contemplating personal consciousness since I was about 6 years old. In 2006, I learned integral philosophy, which vitally allowed me to become an integral spiritual teacher, meaning inclusive of all perspectives. I published a wisdom course in 2008, started teaching it live in 2013, after I overcame my anxiety of public speaking and panic attacks, and I've twice been on the radio to explain what spiritual wisdom actually is.
Have you ever stopped to think about what wisdom actually is? Well, I'm joined this morning by James Blacker. He's a wisdom coach.
But should you even do spirituality? We'll find out. The biggest reason I can think of for spirituality, it isn't even for the benefits of spirituality itself, but for the benefit that spiritual practice brings to shadow practice. As I explained in my last video, there's something called integral life practice, which has 4 core modules: mind, body, spirit, and shadow. The reason you need to hold those 4 in mind is to differentiate spirit and shadow. Spiritual practice is disidentifying with your empirical self. That's your mind and your body. Carl Jung pioneered our understanding of the shadow as the metaphorical bag of the unconscious mind into which we bury any aspects of our personalities which cause other people to be of danger to us one way or another. We each carry this bag around with us and it weighs us down to differing degrees. And so shadow practice is exercises we do to reclaim our true personality and be true to ourselves, which includes spiritual growth, if that's right for us. Is your own Jungian shadow bag full of money? It may well be if you've had to disown your own entrepreneurial potential. And if you have, you might even have convinced yourself that you don't even have any entrepreneurial potential. There's also other gold, including quite likely your deepest capacity to love and be loved. To understand exactly why spiritual practice aids shadow practice, you first need to understand spiritual practice. Who are you? Benefit number 2, spiritual practice brings greater freedom. And as a bonus, I'll explain why it's not true to say that the only thing that's constant in life is change. To understand spiritual wisdom, we need to understand the logical principle of subject versus object. This helps you answer the age-old question, who am I? In logic, a subject is defined as that which is aware of an object. So what objects are near you right now? A pen, a bag, a phone, a cup of tea? They're objects, and you're the subject that is aware of them. Now, take that a step further, and you can realize that your own body is an object that you're aware of. You can even do the same with your thoughts. Have you ever had a thought? Of course you have. But how do you know? Answer, because you're aware of it. Subject, object. So mind, body, and spirit can be thought of as mind, body, and awareness. Mind, body, and awareness of that mind and body. The empirical self of mind and body is fundamentally not what you are. That's why Ken Wilber described it as a colossal case of mistaken identity on the face of the planet. By observing that mind or body as an object, or observing anyone or anything as an object, you're taking the position of what's known as the witness. This witnessing phenomenon is free of form, free of any kind of manifest form, whether physical or intangible. By the way, you can't witness the witness. That's the first mistake people make. But that's one for another day. And I said it's not true that the only constant in life is change. There are 2 constants in life, change and the witness. This spiritual awareness doesn't heal your shadow wounds or even pay your heating bills, but it does provide a certain sense of greater freedom, including that you no longer feel the need to take things personally. So I promised to explain how this helps with shadow work. Well, it's easier to bring about the end or destruction of something, even a negative thought or a constriction in your nervous system, if you're not directly identifying with that thing. Otherwise, the psychology is that you're killing a bit of yourself. The way I choose to explain this is that it's easier to pick up a piece of paper that's in front of you than it is to pick up a piece of paper that you're standing on. A knife can't cut itself, fire can't burn itself, and light can't illuminate itself. But if you can take a witnessing perspective on your empirical self, your mind and body, you can deal with them effectively as objects. And if you can do your shadow work really effectively, you can really reclaim your own brilliance and gold. 3. Greater depth of perspective, i.e. stages of development. One of the most powerful ways that you can understand the full picture of spirituality is via the notion of waking up, growing up, and cleaning up. There are many videos that talk about the benefits of spirituality being such things as increased care or compassion for others. But these are not givens of spiritual experience. They come into play if and when people go through stages of development on any given developmental line. We need to appreciate the difference between states of consciousness and stages of consciousness. States of consciousness are exclusive and stages of consciousness are inclusive. What does that mean? States of consciousness are exclusive. You can't be drunk and sober at the same time. You can't be awake and asleep at the same time. Whereas stages of consciousness are inclusive, such as if you achieve a certain level at a musical instrument or reach level 17 at a computer game, you don't suddenly lose the ability to complete levels 1 to 16. An easy developmental line to understand is the line of care and compassion. The progression there is from egocentric to ethnocentric to world-centric, as is shown on page 31 of my book. Any good integral philosopher will tell you that a person will interpret a spiritual experience from their stage of development and worldview. An egocentric person may interpret their spiritual experience in a way that reinforces their narcissism. An ethnocentric person may interpret it as divine justification for dropping bombs on people of other cultures. So we want to consider not just the horizontal state, waking up, of spiritual experience, but also the vertical stage, growing up aspect. And cleaning up is the shadow work we've already talked about. Peak state experiences may contribute to the development of an ego-aware stage of development, and this can be very powerful indeed, as we're about to see. 4. Optimize your health and vitality. There's something funky called Centauric consciousness, as in that mythical half-human, half-horse beast, and what it can teach us is even cooler. If you imagine the easiest possible jigsaw puzzle, this is a metaphor for the only way that you can harness Centauric consciousness to optimize your bodily health and life force. When a person reaches an ego-aware stage of development, they can observe both their body and mind as objects. This means that they can effectively integrate mind and body, an incredibly profound two-piece jigsaw puzzle. This is known as the Centauric stage of development. Hubert Benoit, Erik Erikson and others use the centaur to symbolize the integration of the body-mind. The centaur is a mythological being with a horse's body and a human's chest, arms and head. As a metaphor for a human, this represents integration of the animalistic body and the mind. Unfortunately, the percentage of the population who have reached this stage capacity is very low, and therefore most people's bodily health and vitality is less than optimal as a result. 5. Emotional freedom. How do you achieve emotional freedom? Emotional freedom doesn't mean you don't have emotions or feelings. It means you have freedom from the fear of them. They become something that you no longer need to resist, but can instead embrace as the honored guardians of your truth that they are. This stops you being afraid of yourself. This in turn stops you resisting life. A pretty valuable point of spirituality, I'd say. Emotional freedom has two components. It's achieved by the capacity to allow your body and mind to deal with emotions and feelings as they wish. Going beyond ego is crucial to this too, because without it, you may have resistance to some of the contents of your mind. A sense of freedom of identity has no resistance to any arising thoughts which may contradict or conflict with any sense of self-identity which you may need to have. As a knock-on benefit, that sense of self also eventually includes not being bothered if you need to cry or scream or shout or whatever, and so the body is also free to process feelings and emotions as it needs to. Hence, you no longer have any resistance to or fear of feelings. And I've said there are 5 huge benefits. Honestly, I could have gone on for days. Should you even do spirituality? The Kissing Consciousness insight called The Illusion of Identical Experiences is going to help you to answer that question for yourself in each and every moment. I'm going to cram a half-hour teaching into a few seconds here. Let's see how it goes. In each and every moment of your life, you're either in a state of self-acceptance or a state of self-constriction and self-judgment. Kissing Consciousness calls these two states love consciousness and fear consciousness. Love consciousness is the state of genuine choice, as well as such things as confidence, positive thinking, success, being true to yourself, and more. Your consciousness is primary, meaning that what you do is less important than whether you do it from a motive of self-acceptance or self-judgment. Your behavior flows nicely from love consciousness, whereas from fear consciousness, your behavior is forced and ineffectual. So while consciousness is primary, behaviors are secondary. So if you take something that is assumed to be good, such as working late, exercise, buying someone flowers, or eating salad, that assumption can backfire if it's done for the wrong reasons. There is no behavior that is inherently desirable or the right thing to do. Everything is contextual. You'll also get desirable experiences and results doing supposedly bad things if it's a choice based in self-acceptance. The illusion of identical experiences shows this in a table by keeping the contents of the table the same. It is the headings of the tables which indicate the differences in the behaviors, experiences, and outcomes. This applies to any behavior and can therefore also be applied to the behavior of spiritual endeavors. So whatever the potential benefits of spirituality may be generally, the only reason to do them is if it's actually your choice to do so, if you want to. There is no should. You can tune in to what feels right for you. Now that you have a clear outline of spirituality and its benefits, an important task remaining is to avoid bad spiritual teachings which can literally waste decades of your life. I've recently documented some of the potential pitfalls, having witnessed some and experiencing others personally. So check out this video where I show you how to recognize and avoid the 3 biggest time wasters out there.